opportunity to meet everyone. I know most of you know John. He's our CEO. Rebecca, who works up in Minnesota, she is our Chief Content Officer. Does a great job of helping folks with videos and very creative. So if you ever have questions about what you can do differently, Rebecca's the person. And then our person behind the scenes, making a lot of things happen in terms of the production of our creative side is Kisa Dickerson. So that's our Quillo staff that's with us today. And our agenda is really filled with talking about this COVID-19 and how organizations are working through that, how you personally may have some challenges, but how are you making space for doing things in a different way? Kind of talking about what's the new normal. So really what we want to do is make sure that this is an opportunity for everyone to share what you're experiencing, what are some of the strategies you're using as you work through this particular time frame, and use this as an opportunity to learn from each other. We'll again share what we're hearing from a lot of individuals as we work with our side on Quillo, working with a lot of provider agencies, et cetera. So we hope that this will be a very informative session for everybody. We'll begin to wrap things off by also continuing to expand on making sure that you have a little self-care for yourself, and what are some resources available to do just that. And then we'll wrap up and talk a little bit about our next call. So really, as we explore these topics today, we're using the Zoom meeting. If you're not familiar with the Zoom, just know that you can go down, you scroll down to the bottom. There's a chat feature. You can click on that, type in your comments. If some of you are more comfortable, you've been on these calls before, you know that we do enjoy if you unmute and go ahead and just talk and have the conversation. We appreciate that too. So whichever way is most comfortable, please leverage the tools to be able to have that conversation with us. So today we are welcoming people from a number of different states. So what I want you to do is let's go ahead and use the chat feature and just indicate what state you're from. Let's take a look at where everybody is joining us from today. You got some from Indiana, got that Minnesota crew going. Dan, thanks. Wisconsin, several from Wisconsin, Kelly, Sarah, Jenny, excellent. Another from Indiana, great. Barb from Minnesota, all right. So you can see we have folks from across the state, and again, we have several other states who are not necessarily represented with us today, but you know, we welcome everyone who is part of our Quillo Nation. So let's kick off and kind of explore this topic, the COVID-19, and we really want to get a pulse in terms of how you're doing, what your organizations are doing, and what's taking place. Don't know if you saw the email or not, but on Monday, John had shared a message with all of our subscribers, and really what we wanted to do was make sure that you had resources at your fingertips. We thought that many of the things that we're hearing would be very helpful for you. So he did send out an email message to everyone. Don't know if you had a chance to read through it or not, but I know that I decided, well, you know, I'm going to take the time and look at each one of these resources, because I know for myself personally, I have to help lead through this. And in order to do that, the more information I know and what's taking place on a more national basis certainly helps, because being here in the state of Indiana, we have our own little state regulations and processes and practices we're following, but you know, there's things across the nation happening also. I will share that one of the resources I found to be very helpful was the webinar that was provided from NADSP. It was titled "The Role of the DSP and the Coronavirus," and really gave some very good informational, I guess, perspective around, you know, as a DSP, what should I be doing? How should I look at this? shared some great resources and referenced a number of different ways to look at this. The individual that was speaking through that, his name was Dr. Rick Rader. So just, again, anybody else have the opportunity to listen to that particular webinar? Anyone? So I would highly recommend, if you haven't listened to that, or if you can't find the email that had that particular resource. Sarah, thank you. You also said you did. You know, again, what I found, that was very helpful, and Sarah, please share your thoughts. It really just explained kind of, you know, what's that critical role the DSP is playing right now. What are the facts versus the myths that are taking place out there in terms of what's being said. It also did a section that was a little more scientific around what's the difference between bacteria and virus. I found that to be very helpful. So those type of things, I think, are really what help us start to better understand, how can I share knowledge with the people that we support. So Sarah, any comments or things that you want to share about after you watched that particular?
Right. I mean, everything that you said, Sue, but what I really liked was in the first couple slides, just the general role of the DSP and how critical, you know, it sounds like what we always say when we're, you know, advocating for higher wages, professionalizing the position, but these are the reasons right now that the role is, you know, I mean, they're the same reasons they've always been, but to remind people how important they are in this role is what really spoke to me. You know, being an advocate, watching for changes in condition, you know, being a counselor, you know, there's a lot of posts right now about people just not really understanding, like, why can't I do my regular routine or see my family and friends? And
Yeah,
yeah, so I think, you know, to me, I took that as, how can we turn that around, or use that information just even for beyond the facts, which I think are really important right now because you're getting inundated with information no matter where you are, but to say thank you to our employees and to the people who are committed to making a difference and being and showing up right now.
absolutely. I think that's a concern for all of us is, you know, what if people are calling off? What happens, you know, if people do get sick and can't make it? I happened to be visiting a friend just this week, who, again, uses supports. She's in her own home, so she's got staff coming in, you know, for the majority of the day. And as I was talking with the staff members, you know, I was just, we were sharing stories about how we are needing to work differently. And I was thinking as I left, wow, if those staff members didn't show up, you know, do they have the backup they need? Do they have the resources available to really be able to assist my friend at this time? So, you know, it made me even think, you know, gosh, maybe I need to call her father and just say, hey, I just want you to know, if you need any assistance or anything, I can help out in this time. So I think that's the challenge that we're all facing as we think through this. So again, it's over 30 minutes in terms of that particular webinar, but I do think it's well worth your time to take a look at that one. And then there were just other resources that were on that particular email that provide just a different perspective at this time, because I think let's face it, we're all focused on the same outcome, and that's to really minimize and stop this virus as it starts to spread. And so the other thing that kind of resonated for me, we added a couple other resources. One was a little booklet that you could use. It's from the autism folks, and you know, how do you talk about this to an individual? So I actually used the booklet to sit down with my daughter, and again, as I mentioned, she's 21 and with Down syndrome, and she's not understanding why she's not able to go bowling and to school and do all those activities. And so we sat down and we started using that booklet as just, again, a tool to help explain to her, here's what's taking place. And once again, I thought about, who are those DSPs out there working with folks, and how can they leverage these tools? So what I encourage you to do is to find those type of resources and think about, how is your organization providing information, sharing perhaps ways that individuals can work with their folks that they support a little differently. The other thing that I have to chuckle with a little bit, and it's always been here, are those virtual tours of museums. And so again, we sat down the other night and watched one of the virtual tours of the museums. That was one of the resources that was provided. And it's always been there, but now because of this particular situation, you're starting to see what are the other opportunities that are there. So we all need to conduct our business a little differently. And that's what I want to open this conversation up with is, what are we doing? And hear from you, what's taking place? What are some of your strategies? But we're going to start with just a couple questions in the chat feature to start. So the first question is, have you or your organization communicated specific guidance or resources to your DSPs? So it's a simple yes or no question. Have you done any special communication? Yes or no? Great. I'm seeing some yeses. Great. Excellent. Yes. Good. Okay. So it sounds like you guys have a lot of strategies then that you can help share. So this is good. The next question, what method was used to communicate the information to them? So was it email? Did you use Facebook, FaceTime information? What methods are we using out there? I see we got a couple email and Facebook. Phone calls were made. The Salesforce Facebook. Okay, great. Some sent out letters, paper, Facebook. One call now system. Great. Okay, excellent. So again, a lot of different resources are being used to communicate. So do you have a feedback mechanism with that? Did you hear, how was it received? Do you hear folks talking back with you and saying, hey, very helpful information? Just curious, what's the feedback you get when you send out information? Any feedback received? Maybe need to scroll down my chat feature a little bit here. Yep, here it comes. Okay, people saying that they've heard some positive feedback from folks. They all appreciated it. Great. Yeah, I think again, people want to be communicated with. They want to hear what's taking place. Somebody commenting here that fear continues to be a big factor. People don't know what's yet to happen or anything like that. So great. Well, now that we kind of got warmed up a little bit with sharing some of the experiences we had, I do want you to talk a little bit about, what are you experiencing? Again, all of you have some sort of strategies, some communication that have gone out. Let's talk a little bit about what those looked like. Would somebody be willing to kind of share a little bit about what they did in order to share information? Because this is how we learn, by sharing that with each other. And please make sure that if you are sharing, that you're speaking into your microphone. Sometimes it can be a little shaky when you're not speaking directly into your mics from your computers. Who's had some good experiences that you'd like to share in terms of what are you doing to help the DSPs get through this time?
So we've implemented a centralized location where we keep our communication, and we communicate with our, not only our DSPs, but our program managers who are managing the DSPs, because we're kind of feel like we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Of what the plan is. So we have one centralized location where all the information is stored that people can look back on, because we number it and date it. And so people aren't getting inundated with email. That's kind of what we're finding. There's so many emails going out back and forth that, it's just inundating. So it's our SharePoint.
Okay.
And everybody has access, and we have a link on the homepage. So that's what we're doing. And we've gotten fairly good feedback. We just have kind of started. I think right now we're just settling into the new normal.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Barb, for sharing that. Great idea. How about others?
One question, this is John. I was talking to a colleague who's an emergency room doctor in New York City. Have you had questions from staff about when they see symptoms in any of the people they support or themselves, about going to the emergency room or going to the doctor, and how do they determine and when is the time to do that? That showed up a lot on the NADSP Facebook page, with folks not knowing for sure what to do when they see symptoms.
This is Colleen. We've implemented all our staff before they go to an individual's home or apartment, they call and check and ask the basic questions of, are you running a fever? Do you have a sore throat? Do you have a cough? Have you been with anyone who's been ill? And then the coaches are also asked, we call our DSPs coaches, are also asked those questions before they go see someone, so that if there's a yes to any of those questions, then the session is canceled. If the individual they're supporting answers yes and needs, then the next question is to further investigate. Have they spoken with a family member? Have they spoken with their doctor's office? Do they have medication? And so we're just kind of going through a little bit of our own little triage system to identify whether somebody would be critically ill enough to go to a clinic or an emergency room. And fortunately, we haven't had any of those situations yet, but that's kind of our process of trying to break it down into different levels of alertness, if you will.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Colleen. That's a great tip. Anybody else using anything similar or want to share how you're working through that right now?
Somebody mentioned earlier that the fear factor, that there's so much news out there that almost every radio station or internet site is putting out some news, and some of it's very very frightening to people of what it says, and others are trying to say it's nothing big, don't worry about it. But one of the sections in one of the resources we found that was really interesting was, how do you take care of yourself and help urge your staff to take care of yourself when they can't work from home? If you're a DSP working in somebody's home that has to show up, you've got to be there and you're on the front lines. And that fear message that they're getting about how serious this is, have you found any ways that you can share of how you're helping people deal with that level of fear that they're feeling about not only themselves, their family? Schools are being canceled. Indiana just announced they're closing schools through May 1st. So families now have to go the entire month of April without school. And how are you hearing about those kinds of issues from staff coming up about, what do I do with my kids? Where are we going to get through this in the process?
Well, this is Colleen again. Our staff has, fear kind of the whole gamut. Fear from either them getting sick or the individual that they support getting sick. the crisis of, so many of the individuals we support have underlying conditions that could make them very vulnerable. The questions are, in terms of fear, like, do I take them out to go grocery shopping? Should I go grocery shopping for them? How do we stay in contact if they've refused services? They don't want anyone to come. We've seen a lot of fear on part of the individuals we support that are very anxious about not getting ill. They hear everybody's dying, and so we're trying to alleviate that by doing a lot of phone calls and face-to-face if they are not wanting anyone to come to their home for services. Fear also that on the part of the DSPs that how am I going to pay my bills if I'm not working, if everybody's canceling on me? What kinds of resources could I do? So we've put together kind of also a resource list that for kind of continuing ed. So if they do a certain amount of modules or additional training things that we've sent to them, they can bill for that, and we're recording that and showing that as additional time that we can pay them. But it's a challenge because if someone's canceled a 4-hour session, we can't really pay them for 4 hours, but we're trying to put in, like, maybe we'll pay 50% of your time to alleviate some of that fear. But this week alone, we've had 73 shift cancels, either on the part of the person we're supporting or on part of staff who either can't get there or are stuck at home with children and child care and things like that. So it's definitely affecting our operations.
Yeah. So again, anytime you can put together kind of resource list of things, that's excellent. But you're challenged every day with probably a little bit different situation depending on what's taking place. Other thoughts on that particular question? Anybody else have any resources, tips that you're using to get through this time that others might be able to leverage and think about?
The news changes so quickly. If somebody hears on the radio that there's going to be checks coming April 6th to everybody, and they start asking their supervisor what that means, and will I get $1,000 from the government? Keeping on top of this is a really difficult job for everybody up and down the line, and it sounds like you're doing some really good things. I asked a question about how you're handling grocery shopping. That's a one we see a lot on the DSP page. In Barbara said their leadership is going to the store and delivering. And folks doing online ordering.
Online ordering is being used quite a bit. So, yeah. And so you run into a little bit of an issue with the individuals not having credit cards to order online. So,
good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point.
So those of you that ran day or employment programs, have you had to shut those down? And then how did you adjust staffing? Were those people transferred over to the residential side, or how do you handle that sort of short notice conversion that you had to go through?
Well, I can speak to it, but I was trying to type
Sure.
it. So
everybody often decides I've got nothing to offer, and you all have something to offer. That's
I think our biggest challenge right now is keeping all the staff well. And so we, it isn't a lockdown per se, but we are not letting people into our group homes and apartments. People can go and leave and be with their family, but then they have to be monitored with temperatures twice a day for 14 days. We're being very cautious so that our staff do not get sick. We have sanitation procedures in place. So our frontline staff, we are really protecting them very much. That's why, like, leadership can't go in the houses and in the apartments. We just are trying to keep everyone safe and well so that, nobody in the homes gets sick.
Yeah.
And that's why we really strongly encourage people not to go grocery shopping because I guess you just don't know.
Yeah. Who they're going to,
you know, so we have a centralized location where we're putting food there where program managers can go shop with, you know, the individuals they're supporting. So they feel like they're being, you know, not being shut in their home, but, you know, that it's just going to be different right now. You know, just explaining it to the, you know, this is what we need to do right now to be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Barbara, for sharing. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Pam or Jenny or Kelly, have you guys done the same sort of things about visitation and even with family going in and then monitoring folks once they get visitors?
Well, I can speak to our organization. We have absolutely restricted visitors and said at this point we're not allowing any visitors into our adult family homes. Guardians can, you know, we have other means to communicate and to stay in contact, but we feel like the risk is pretty high, so we've decided to not do that. We do have our clients coming to some of our day services programs still, because that's as controlled as we can make it anyway, environment that we've still got that operation open, although that comes with its own potential risks as well. But we've left that open, and we've got a child care operation. We've left our child care operation open as well. So.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, again, I know that you've got
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you very much. You've got to put a lot of different thinking around this in terms of what you're going to do, and your communication is certainly vital. I just want to share one of the individuals happens to be a subscriber here in Indiana, Terry Hooser. You know, he did put out information to both the clients as well as the consumer, and he also then followed up with a video on Quillo to his staff, and I've noticed that, you know, he's doing like ongoing messaging through Quillo to his folks, and he gave us permission to share this with you today. So again, he was just doing a quick briefing to his folks. So we just want to share with you what a video might look like if you decide that, you know, hey, let's get something out on Quillo to our folks. So here's Terry.
Hi, here are a few things to consider as we're dealing with the flu bug and the coronavirus in our area. First, be sure to wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds or use a good hand sanitizer. Also, use personal protective equipment, especially your gloves. Normally, you don't need to use a mask unless your client is ill or you have a respiratory illness yourself. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue, then throw the tissue in the trash or cough into your sleeve. Limit personal contact such as hugging, kissing, shaking hands, and high fives. Clean and disinfect frequently touch objects and surfaces using a regular household cleaning spray or wipe. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. If you find that your client or someone in their house is sick, please call the office or on-call manager to reschedule services. And finally, stay home if you're sick until you've been symptom-free for at least 24 hours. Thanks and have a great day.
So again, just wanted to kind of share with you how, you know, some of our subscribers are using this. He's followed up with a couple other videos, and then we have a couple other subscribers who are doing the same thing, that we're starting to see, you know, kind of just informational videos come out just to remind staff, you know, here's what you need to be doing. So hopefully that gives you some thinking around, you know, what do we need to be doing? How might we leverage Quillo to help us through this time? Before we kind of move on to showing you another little model that I have, any other comments or questions people want to share about kind of your experience and how you're working through this process? Anyone else?
This is Rebecca. I would just sort of reinforce that there's, you know, we're still dealing with a lot of unknowns in this, and people have, you know, agencies are having different approaches, and there isn't one right answer right now. So just, having this forum as a way to share ideas that are happening, different things that folks are doing. If there are other ways that, you want to continue to learn from other groups or share what you're doing, those communications are open. If you want to drop us a note, we can keep folks updated. But just thanks for sharing what you are doing. And yeah, we're all, still in this together.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we hear from people, that they want to feel that they are in it together, that the leadership understands, because they're going through the same things, that many of you are working from home as you do it. And that's a whole different process for people, that idea of isolation. And something that was kind of fun, that my grandson's second grade teacher arranged a Zoom meeting for all the kids in our class. It was all optional, and 12 of the 21 participated today. And they just got to see everybody. And so the question about feeling alone when you are isolated, and how we can use technology, whether it's as simple as FaceTime, or something if you've got a Zoom account, or something that's Google Hangouts, which is available there. The idea of how they can see their friends outside of the home, and how they can see people. Because it is a time that taking that isolation is important, but how do you do it? And how do you share effective things to do to help with that along the way? Becomes a great idea for folks.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize, Colleen made a good point here on the chat, just saying that, she's having difficulty getting supplies like forehead thermometers, face masks, and sanitizers, and I'm sure everyone's running into that. I can't even find some for my own home, let alone I can only imagine trying to find some for your agencies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great. Yeah, and I don't know how to solve that, Colleen. Anybody have any tips on that one? I don't know. Those are tough ones, because supplies are definitely running short. So. I know that there's some formulas that you can use to make your own hand sanitizers. I've heard that. I don't know them off the top of my head.
Be careful, and don't use the ones that include vodka, I'm told. So there's people on the internet promoting vodka and aloe vera as hand sanitizer, but it doesn't work. So
yeah.
And that's, sometimes we need to laugh a little bit too through this, because as we get through it, it's going to be getting through it together, including people that have checking with how their family's doing, how their kids are doing with all this. And, a lot of things on the NADSP page are, well, I can't bring my kids to work. And some agencies are figuring out, what do we have to do about that? What can we do about that? And how can we assist people? And they go home and they have an elderly parent staying with them who's 80 years old. And they're a DSP, and they're scared about bringing something home, even if they're young and they might not get sick. One of the messages I would just share as we think about this, there's the technical information we've got to get to people, what our rules and processes are going to be. And then this maybe leads into Sue's next part here, but it's the relationships and those people that we care about them and what's going on in their life, and how are they getting through this and the stresses, because it is really challenging as we begin looking at that. Yesterday, I stopped at our Meijer store to get some Clorox wipes, and they literally didn't take them off the pallet. They just dropped the pallet in the aisle and opened the top, and people were unloading it, and within minutes it was half gone. And you were supposed to limit yourself to 2. So it is a new normal that we're learning through all this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, let me share with you another tool that, again, this was a model that we as the Quillo staff kind of talked through when we started talking about Quillo and how we're going to be focused, especially as we thought about retention. And so as we've been thinking about this new normal, what we recognized is that this model actually can be used with kind of the situation with the COVID-19 right now. And as John was mentioning, what are going to be the new normals when you start to think about the relationships? the relationship between you and your staff, the relationship between staff and the people that they support. You know, what will those new normals need to look like? So don't use this necessarily as the retention wheel, but think about it in context of the COVID-19. Same with time. Where are you needing to change your time? How do you need to be looking at time differently in terms of, are you checking in on staff? Are you doing things to make sure that they know that you care? Because all of that does reflect back on that relationship that you have. So where is your time being spent, and do I need to be doing something a little bit differently? Are we making time to check in on staff? Is there something we need to be doing differently? Well, how about our processes? I think this is one that we're all going to be needing to take a look at in light of this particular situation. Are we having to rewrite some of the processes that we currently use? I know that, you know, with some of you in talking about what you were doing, those are different processes that we're now using. So how are we then communicating that to those individuals that, hey, we do want you to take your temperatures more frequently. We want you to wash your hands more frequently, doing those things. Probably some of you're creating new processes just from the conversation that we had. There's new processes now being created. And then again, what processes are in place that, you know, prevent staff from working effectively? You know, one of the comments we were talking about on the DSP website was somebody was saying that, you know, gosh, if my organization would just let us use the Wi-Fi in the home for right now, I would feel 10 times better. So I don't know, is that something that you can look at and say, you know what, do we open up this process a little bit differently? Do we do it in a new normal so that it can help the DSP feel more comfortable? And then finally, we just got to look at our own habits and make space for new ones. Think about, again, tips, the things that you've got to do to just remain healthy. New habits, I know even for myself, you know, are we changing our own behavior to protect ourselves by just washing our hands, avoiding touching? I have a habit of, you know, constantly doing this with touching my face, and, you know, I shouldn't be doing that anymore. Those are habits that I typically have done that I have to change. Practicing social distancing. Funny, we had some neighbors over the other night, and we sat around the kitchen table and we all talked about how we needed to give each other a little bit more space. We haven't done that before. So, you know, thinking about how are we doing that differently? Making sure that you're covering your cough, your sneezes in the corner of your elbow instead of, you know, covering with your mouth. I know I talk to my daughter about that all the time. Again, it's the simple habits every day that we now have to think of, what is the new normal and how do we communicate that? Not only thinking about ourselves, but the people that we're leading. What do we need to do to make it look different? So you can use this kind of as that, I guess, thinking about what are the areas that we might need to change. Again, I'm just going to open it up a little bit. Anything on this resonate for you? Kind of spark an idea, something a little different? Or is there a tool that you're using that helps you think through the different strategies that you're using as an organization or for yourself personally? Would love to hear your comments.
The one I'll jump in with is on the phone policy. A lot of agencies have a zero tolerance for using your cell phone. In times past, people were worried about folks Facebooking and Instagramming when they should have been with folks. And now if they've got kids at home that are being watched by an older sibling, they want to be in touch with their kids. And so how do you look at that in a different way, recognizing the fear that people are dealing with and needing to stay in touch with what's going on? The other is some states are changing rules about billing and staffing in ways to try to adjust this. And so as states become more flexible, how do you become flexible with staff at the same time meeting all the requirements that you have to have within your agency? Those are things that we're going to probably deal with as this continues on. Short term, people say maybe by June, July. Others saying maybe into the fall before we're back to a more normal, or the old normal, of how we're interacting. And it could be longer. So those are pieces to begin thinking about, of how do people feel that you're taking care of them in this time of change and stress.
Yeah, yeah. John, you made a good point on the chat too, as Colleen was talking through about ordering supplies, and she gave the tip, order later in the evening with Costco or Amazon, but now it still takes 2 or 3 weeks. And again, just mentioning that suppliers could consider themselves a healthcare provider, and maybe that gets a better response. It's being creative in this time, forging new ways, new paths. So again, I don't want to shut down any conversation, but I want you to kind of think about, kind of imagine for just a moment. And I know we just got through the snowy season for some of our states, but just imagine yourself, there's just been a new snowfall. And I think that this particular situation is kind of an analogy to this, that snow starts to fall and you've got this deep, 3 feet of snow that's just blanketed the surface now. And, what's the path you're forging? And as you're walking through, and that particular deep, fresh snow, you're the first person to go through it. And as leaders, sometimes that's exactly how you feel. As you're forging through that snow, it's a little difficult. It's a little crazy. You're not sure where you're going, but you're starting a new path. And sometimes people may look at that path and say, I don't know that I want to go down that path right now, but that's still the best path to go. And so as a leader, you have to always forge that path and help bring others along. So sometimes that requires helping explain the why, shifting that mindset for folks, helping them start to see that, hey, this new path is the best path to go. And then that starts the new way, the new norm of what you're doing. So I just like that analogy, because sometimes we kind of get stuck walking the same path, and we have to now say, hey, it's time to create that new path. And I think that's a great analogy to what that might look like. So the question I would have for you is, what are the new paths that you're forming right now around these areas of the habits that you want people to be doing, the processes you need to take, the time that you're allocating, as well as how are you creating and rebuilding relationships in a different way with this new situation. So
I think
I would go ahead.
I just think for me, just in my heart, I know to have patience with people. I know that sounds kind of, Pollyanna and foo-foo, but I think I've found that everyone's in a different place, and, someone may not be at the same place that I am. And I think, for me, just being open to hearing and just not valid concerns, but just having people feel like they've been heard. And, I kind of tend to just go on think the positive and, things are going to work out. But I don't want to get into the negative thinking. I think that's just going to drag everybody down. So I think for me, keeping the process positive, and how can we do it together?
Yeah, those are great points, Barbara. Because you're right. If you get into that negative spiral, that can really shift things. So again, you as a leader, just that listening, hearing where a person really is so important. As a matter of fact, I just had someone yesterday send an email and inform me that they couldn't be a part of something that we invited them to be a part of, and how disappointed they were. And you could just tell in how the person wrote the email that they didn't want to send it, but for where they were and what was happening right now. And that's exactly what she shared was, I got to take care of myself first, and I'm not going to be able to take care of the responsibility. And you know what? I have to say, I sat back before I responded, because was I disappointed? Absolutely. Do I want to be her, want that person to be part of what we were exploring? Absolutely. But I have to understand from her side, where is she? What does she need to be doing? And it took courage. It took courage to step forward and say, time out, I can't do this. So, I applauded her. And that's what I think is most important. And Barbara, you said it very well. Very nice. How about for others?
Colleen, I know with our clients, we just implemented today a check-in checklist that our team leaders are going to communicate by phone or FaceTime with the people we support twice a week. So that, and they're, asking the questions, what have you been doing? Do you have, not only are you ill, but, how are you connecting with your family? How are you connecting with your friends? Do you need, ideas on what you can do to, handle the boredom or handle, a lot of our people have gotten to be very used to being in the community and doing lots of things all day long. And so this is very new for them, very frustrating. We're seeing some anger issues from individuals that can't get out. Why do I have to stay in? Why can't we go out here? It's like, everything's closed,
Yeah.
And, we're also then looking at kind of a stair-step disaster plan. Several counties or cities in Indianapolis have closed unnecessary travel. And are our DSPs considered unnecessary travel for some clients? Should we cancel them, or do we have to take the leadership on that, or is that something that's going to be dictated by, a government official? And so, so there's a plan for that. And then, if it continues on and we, start losing people because they're either ill or, they can't get services, what's that do from an operation administrative standpoint? What's our critical staff that we need to maintain in the long term if this continues on really for several months, which could be devastating to a lot of agencies. So we're working on that plan. We don't have a lot of answers yet, but we're just starting to look at that.
To start explore it. Yeah. So you're starting the new path in the snow in terms of, what is this going to look like?
Right.
How's that going to change? Absolutely. Yeah. Colleen, thanks for sharing that. Because those are challenges that are real for folks right now. Absolutely. Anyone else?
The only thing that I would add is that there has to be, I think, a collective added piece of empathy for our employees. Every one of them is unique, and every one of them has a different set of circumstances that they're dealing with. We all are dealing with this in our own unique way, and we have to be in a position where we empathize with those employees and help them to know that we care about them, we get it, and yet we also still have a job to do. But we have to be in a position where we reflect a high degree of empathy so that they understand that we know that you've got a child care situation, or you've got an elderly parent, or you've got, everybody's situation is very, very different. We just have to be in a position where we reflect that empathy and they know that we're all in this thing together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great point, Kelly. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know that, again, there's probably still new paths we're all going to be forging. But as we think about this, if you just had 15 minutes, if you carved out and made space, 15 minutes for your day tomorrow, what is the one thing that you would do? What's the new path that you would forge? and it's going to look different for each of us. But just take a moment and think about that. What path would look different?
You know, one of the things that is thinking, starting small. And that's why I thought Sue had a great idea, 15 minutes. That thinking about some of your comments about, Barbara, your comment about patience, and Colleen, your thing about listening, and Kelly, your comment about empathy, that what are things that we could do for just a few minutes a day that would start some habits that would start reinforcing those that are different than what we're doing today. And that becomes a great way to build on those and expand that impact as we look at it. Because our folks, I think Kelly says something really important. Everybody's unique, and every one of their situations is unique, as are the pressures on each and every one of you and all the rest of the leaders, that everybody's trying to deal with it. And so how do we extend that same patience to our colleagues who are management with us, coworkers? And that stress is everywhere. And it comes down to beginning to think about those pieces, and you know, everything from the mundane of, you got new employees you're bringing on board and throughout all of this, and you're recruiting new people, and you're asking them to join in the midst of this whole new situation. So think about and there's no right answer here. What would you do with 15 found minutes that would be a little bit different, and to begin to change your habits and processes? And don't need to share it today, but just, I know I'm going to personally try to think about that, and what does it deal with, and something I could deal with in 15 minutes. It would be a really positive thing.
Yeah. And some have shared there on the chat. So thank you for doing that. You know, one of the things that you can do is you can make a plan, write it down. That's how things start to change. Maybe create a calendar reminder. I know for me, oftentimes if I want to change something, I put just a quick task message on my calendar. Use a Post-it note someplace on the mirrors in the morning, so you see it every morning. And then find someone who's going to help reinforce it. I think those are just, again, some of the small tips. And again, thanks for those who added in the chat some of the things that you're going to do, like use the 3 questions. I like that. Those are some things that you can do. So hopefully it just starts you thinking a little differently today, and thinking about how we can make a difference for our staff, and love the ideas, the conversation that everyone brought forth for us today. The other key piece, though, you have to always remember is your self-care. You're not going to be effective if you're not healthy. So make sure that you're taking a moment for yourself. So what we did is we just identified some of the videos that Quillo has on its site. That, again, if you go to the search bar, so this is what the home page would look like on the app. You go to the search bar at the top and type in these ideas. Type in yoga. And what you're going to see is some different short videos around stretching, guided meditation. Emily and Sarah has done a great series of yoga videos for us. Type in time lapse. Again, it's a short 60-second scenery time lapse that just lets you kind of sit back and meditate. The one I love is, this puts a smile on my face. Matter of fact, I had to show this to my daughter yesterday because things were a little down, and I said, let's have some fun. So we went to the rough video. Type in rough, you'll see a great video there that just gives you a nice smile. And then just type in self-care, because there's a lot of other options out on the videos. So Colleen, you know it is super silly, but it does bring a smile to everybody's face. So those are some of the self-care videos that, if you want to take a look at those, might be helpful for your own self-care. Well, hey, we are closing in on the 3 o'clock hour here. We have about 3 minutes remaining. So again, good conversation today. A lot to think about, a lot of things to process. Loved the ideas that a lot of you shared, and put it into action. We look forward to continuing the conversations. April 16th will be our next conversation with the Quillo Nation Call. If you have ideas about topics or things that you feel would be helpful to understand on the Quillo Nation calls, drop us an email. We would love to hear from you. So before we sign off, questions? Yes.
Sorry, this is Rebecca. Just wanted to give a quick heads up to the daily focus schedule in April. We thought pretty specifically about how we wanted to use the daily messages that go out. If we stick to business as usual and or, you know, really address what's going on. And we found a happy medium. You'll notice on the calendar that comes out with the notes that we've identified one day a week that we're calling Q to You, a moment to pause from Quillo to you, that will be addressing what's going on now, right? How are you feeling, kind of the check-in videos. The rest of it's an attempt to be business as usual, right? A video on Earth Day, things that are coming up in April. So take a look at it, but we're, you know, finding that balance with those daily videos, but always up for more ideas from you.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all
so much,
very much,
everybody.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Best wishes out there for everything. Hopefully you all stay healthy. That's the main thing. Have a good day. Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.